Okay. Do I wait for the thing? It still says waiting for the host to start the webinar.
Oh, really? Oh. Yeah, maybe let's give it a minute.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, so it should be good now.
Okay. Welcome to the Complete Streets Commission's May 8th regular commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in accordance with public health guidelines. I would like to introduce Complete Streets Commission members and city staff present. I'm Chair Jackie Sebrian. Commissioners present include Meredith Bergen Bailey, Sally Cole. I meant to ask about this. Athena Irokamos, thank you. Lizbeth King and Matthew Raskoff. Commissioner Brian Altman is absent. City staff present include Kevin Chen. Kevin, would you please provide instructions to the commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just so that you know, I am flying solo tonight, so do give me some leeway as I'm kind of flipping through pages and making announcements, etc. Matthew had the day off. Okay, so thank you, Chair Cyprian and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the May 8th Complete Streets Commission meeting, and thank you for attending. For members of the public who wish to provide public comments for any items on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on that item, virtual attendees on Zoom may engage the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press 9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. And that concludes the instruction, and I return the meeting back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Under reports and announcements, city staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Kevin, are there any reports and announcements?
I do. Thank you very much. So there's a few city council actions that have taken place since the last time we met that might be of interest to the commission here. So first and foremost, the city council authorized the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding, what we call MOU, with Caltrain to develop design and environmental clearance documents for the Middle Avenue Caltrain crossing project. So this is a really big milestone. As many of you know, the Middle Avenue undercrossing project is one of the key projects for the city. We've been going through some of the conceptual design and environmental documents, but this is really a really remarkable step for the city to be able to proceed with that MOU. And then basically the next step is for Caltrain to start the necessary work for the design and environmental clearing stage. So definitely a really good milestone for the city. The second item is that the city council adopted an ordinance to reset some of the speed limits. I believe I've shared that staff report with the council commission already, but there are various streets within the city that we're going to be able to lower the speed limit, particularly within the downtown, the business district, where it will be able to lower from 25 to 20. So for those of you that might know, we basically have 3 streets that we're going to do that to. Santa Cruz Avenue from Johnson to Merrill, Oak Grove from University to Alma, and the Menlo from University to El Camino. So those 3 streets would go, or those 3 segments of the streets would go from 25 to 20. And of course, throughout the city, there's various streets that's listed in that staff report, including Middle Avenue from Olive to University, which is going to go down from 30 to 25. So with that, the entire Middle Avenue would now be 25 miles per hour speed limit sign. The last item, some of you attended the meeting, so appreciate that last night, is that the city council adopted the resolution to make the buffer bike lane on Middle Avenue permanent. So what that means is that staff will be going back to the drawing board to do some refinement to the design itself, with the goal of really being able to implement a lot of the civil work. So for example, the traffic calming, the bike lanes, and the resurfacing of Middle Avenue with the goal of construction towards summer of next year. With that approval, though, there are also two particular elements that will continue as trials. One is the Neelam Park frontage parking, where staff recommendation last night was to convert it from parallel to backing angle parking. Many of you, you guys heard the item, so I'm not going to go into the details. And then also the other pilot, which is the Blake Street temporary closure, will continue to be a pilot, allowing staff to monitor, get feedbacks, see if there's any other safety concerns. The intent for both pilots is to be able to, for the Neelam Park frontage pilot, to do the installation by fall of this year, and then both pilot report back to the city council and the commission by summer of next year to see if we want to continue those pilots or make them permanent. So with that, I will conclude my announcements and update. Thank you.
Thanks. I just have a clarifying question. Kevin, I noticed when Jackie and you and I were discussing the staff recommendations around middle during our meeting a few weeks ago, we were looking at that overhead view of Neelam parking, which is one of the most complex things you might want to look at. But we were talking about that little section that's, if you're looking down to the right, toward El Camino, of the parking that's to the right of the Blake crosswalk, and sort of saying, what's going to happen with those spaces to the right of the Blake crosswalk? And we were just chatting about that because, as we said, it might be hard to back into them if the crosswalk's there. So I noticed last night in the staff report of the council that it looked like currently there wasn't any parking planned for that section, right? It looked like it was kind of crossed off. And I just wondered if that's going to be something the staff will continue to explore, because I'm not sure, but maybe that's a bike racks or who knows, but I'm just wondering if right now that's kind of excluded from the parking.
Yeah, so I believe Vice Chair Cole, you're referring to the little kind of partition area that's in front of the Neelam Park, I guess, east of the crosswalk.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
So that area, there's a little area right there. The plan right now, as is currently proposed or accepted, is that we will be able to convert that to one ADA parking space, because there used to be an ADA parking space there. So we'll be able to fit in one ADA parking space. We could potentially fit in one more, but there's some civil, there's like an island there. I don't know if you remember that there's like a little tiny island there.
I'll go look at that.
That essentially kind of prevent us from putting another space in. So right now the plan is that the whole area will essentially be one ADA parking space with an opportunity of maybe having one more if we're willing to do some civil work. But if we do civil work, that's going to delay the implementation. And that's one of the reasons why we might just go with one ADA space there for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to mention, I don't know if this has been part of the staff's process ever in the past, but Commissioner King and I had taken a site visit to Neelam Park, especially to look at the parking before the CSC meeting on that last time. And I found it really helpful to really look at it close up with another commissioner. It sounds like one of the results of the meeting last night was some follow-up on staff's part to monitor feedback, data usage, things like the Blake closure or what the parking behavior is like around Neelam Park, with the back end, et cetera. And I'm just raising a hand, volunteering Liz too, but I think that we would be willing to go back and maybe be eyes and ears and sort of have clipboards out for 2 hours and write down our observations or something in the period of time that you are collecting feedback, if that's useful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Always welcome commissioners. Being able to take up your personal time and make observations and report back to staff, always welcome. Yeah.
Can I add a follow-on comment? That ADA space that seems to have like space for more than just an ADA thing. Any thought to like using it for bike racks?
Yes, we have thought about that. particular element right now, because of the redesign, there's one thing that we need to accommodate, which is garbage bins and recycle bins that are in front of the park right now. And as is currently designed for, we are trying to avoid needing to take up a parking space, which means that area is actually a prime location for the relocation of those bins. Right now, that's the plan actually to remove those bins over there, so it's kind of out of sight. But then also, it doesn't really take up any more spaces because there wasn't really going to be space there in the first place. But we have one of the feedback that we got last night was additional parking bike racks. So that is something that we noted, and we'll go back and revisit the site and see if there's opportunity to add bike racks elsewhere too. But that site will continue to be explored as one of the options.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's not escaping my notice that we're providing parking for bikes or for cars
Right.
and garbage bins, but not yet bikes.
Yep.
But I appreciate that we're gonna add that.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
just to tag on to Chair Sebrin, let's continue to look at bike racks. I mean, I'd be interested to see bike behavior when people come to the park.
Yeah.
I know we had a conversation, Kevin, about those spaces that used to exist along the driveway opposite the tennis court. Maybe there's some bike racks there. So I think it would be something that we'd love to help weigh in on some ideas.
And like I mentioned earlier, if any of the commissioners have suggestions for bike rack locations, more than happy to take those in as we kind of move forward.
I think my primary feedback is I've just decided is right front and center. But I'll be more specific later. Thank you, Kevin. Under public comment, members of the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission.
Excuse me, Chair. Sorry, I just realized we might have skipped roll call B1. That's my mistake. I forgot to put that in the notes. Because we have three new commissioners, so we were gonna take a round for the instrument. Yeah, that's my mistake. I forgot to add that into the notes. So if you look at the actual agenda,
Yep.
it's B1.
Okay, I will loop back to B1. After finishing roll call, we would like to welcome our three new commissioners tonight. Athena Irakomos, I'll get there. Meredith Bergen Bailey and Matthew Raskoff. And Assistant Jasper. Okay, under public comment, members of the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Kevin, can you please call for general public comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So again, for members of the public who wish to provide public comment on non-agendized items on tonight's agenda, so basically non-agendized items, after the chair call for, I'm sorry, I can skip that one. You can tell that it's not my forte to read this line right here. Here we go. For virtual attendees on Zoom, they may engage the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, do press 9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name, and you can then step up to the podium to make your comment. I do not have any comment cards from the public, and I am not seeing any raised hands virtually. So I think, Chair, we can close the comment period and move on to the next item.
Thank you, Kevin. Under regular business, the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require commission approval. The first regular business item tonight is accept the Complete Streets Commission minutes for April 10, 2024. Any clarification from the commission before I take public comment? Right. Kevin, can you please call for public comment on this item?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So for virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press 9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name, and then you can step up to the podium to make your comment. So once again, I do not have any cards, and the virtual attendees do not have their hands raised, so I'll return the meeting back to the chair.
All right, thank you. Let's see, do I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes, and I would like to thank you, Kevin, for providing so much detail in your account of the motion, which was quite detailed. I think that's really helpful for people to see the nature of the conversation we had about certain things. So thank you. And that's my motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it. All right.
Okay, so I believe at this point, I have a motion by Vice Chair Ko and a second by Commissioner King. For those excuse me, commissioners that would like to vote yes to approving the minute, if you can please raise your hands. And in this case, I believe, yeah, so. Yes. It's okay. Yeah. I think in this case, technically speaking, if a commissioner have watched the video and read the minutes, and they also believe that it's been accurate, they technically could vote on it. I think practice-wise, yeah, it's traditionally abstain. But yeah, in this case, I think we can just go with unanimous votes. Yeah, thank you.
All right, E2, new commissioner onboarding. Kevin Chen, Senior Transportation Engineer, can you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you can just give me 1 second, I am going to go ahead and I did prepare a presentation for this. Here we go. All right, great. So good evening, everyone. Kevin Chen, Senior Transportation Engineer with the City of Menlo Park. First of all, a big welcome to the new commissioners. This is a very exciting time for the city. We have a lot of projects going on, so definitely. And based on my private conversation with you all seem very enthusiastic about the transportation network of the city. So very much looking forward to working with you all to make the city continue to be better. So with tonight's item, I mainly wanted to go over a few things just for the benefit of the new commissioners, but also for the entire commission, just to as a refresh course. The agenda is relatively simple, mainly going to go over some of the commission's roles and responsibilities, followed by giving you a kind of a behind the curtain of the transportation division, so to speak. And then finally concluding with some look aheads as we move forward with the commission. So the commission, the Complete Street Commission, similar to other commissions for the city, is an advisory body. So what that means is that the commission here is to assist in achieving the city council's priorities. As many of you know, our city council on a yearly basis set their priorities for the city, which then translates into staff's workload and resources being spent on. So as one of the commissions for the city, one of your roles and responsibilities here is to help achieve those goals. And what that means is, excuse me, essentially being able to kind of hear public testimonies. Complete Street Commissions meetings are public meetings. And as many of you know, many of our transportation projects come forth to the commission for feedback and recommendations. So as a result of that, typically we'll have public comment periods from various projects, various topics. So one of the responsibilities is to hear those testimonies and weigh those as you make your decision for those projects. The other way to kind of help with that, achieving those priorities, is to study those matters and then return a recommendation. Generally speaking, each commissioners would vote based on your view of the project, and then collectively, a motion will be passed if there's a majority approval. Of course, then lastly, those recommendations will be folded into a final staff report, then goes to the city council. Staff present a similar topic to the city council for final approval. With that being said, even though this is an advisory body, the Complete Streets Commission does have a particular power, which is to designate parking zones. And this was established by Muni Code 11.24.026, effectively basically established the authority for the Complete Streets Commission to be able to redesignate parking. So some of you have been through this already, but I think last year we had a few parking items where we received requests to remove parking next to driveways for site visibility purposes. And those items came to the commission and through various channels either get approved or have got approved and then got appeal, having to go to the city council, etc. So those are some of the sequences that the Complete Streets Commission is also a part of. The Muni Code is very specific as to exactly when that power then transferred to the city council from the commission. In the downtown area, if a particular request is 3 spots or less, then that item will come to the Complete Streets Commission without the need to go to the city council. The city council would essentially only be necessary if there's an appeal. Outside of the downtown area, then that number jumps up to 5. So again, if a request comes in, if it's 5 or less spaces through that request, the Complete Streets Commission would have the power to approve it without the need to go to the city council. So, and then again, this is one single project location. That's why most of the items I think that came to the Complete Streets Commission last night or last year, all were able to be approved by the Complete Streets Commission alone. Finally, this bullet point, the last bullet point, I just wanted to kind of briefly touch on it. Eventually, I think there will be a more comprehensive training on this topic, but I do want to just kind of point to a particular aspect of conflict of interest. So you all are Menlo Park residents, either own or rent. If you're renting, either you have a lease or you're month to month. Those various aspects of your status, they do matter in terms of the project approval. However, that is only on projects that the Complete Streets Commission actually approve on. So what that means is generally that's the parking items. If it's an item that is the commission is only recommending to the city council, which means the commission is not in that moment a decision body making or decision-making body, then the conflict doesn't apply. With that being said, generally speaking, I do ask commissioners to be just a little bit cognizant about the items that do come to the commission. For example, if the item involves your employer, then do let me know ahead of time. Most likely, there won't be a conflict again because the commission 99% of the time is not the decision making body. However, I would like to have the opportunity to at least evaluate that, and if necessary, escalate that to the city attorney just to be on the safe side. And again, that basically two particular items would be items that involve your employer or items that are within 500 feet radius of your residence. So again, and that particular item, depending if you're owner, renter, with lease, without lease, that matters as well. Again, not gonna go into details. I just wanna bring that to your attention. So as future projects comes in, if you can just keep an eye on that and let me know if there's a potential conflict and we can resolve that before the meeting. Okay, so in addition to just kind of some of the responsibilities I just mentioned, the commission also have subcommittees. Many of you know, transportation involves a lot of different aspects. We have safe route to school, we have safe streets, we have neighborhood traffic calming, we have individual projects. So the subcommittees are really an opportunity for those commissioners that are more passionate about a particular topic that aligns with the city council's priorities to able to form a non-Brown Act body. A non-Brown Act body generally means less than 4 commissioners, so 3 or less. It's a non-Brown Act body that allows the subcommittees to be able to have conversations offline on those particular topics, and then eventually at an appropriate time, bring that topic to the commission for discussion. So generally speaking, a subcommittee will usually be formed for 2 reasons. One, there is one of the commissioner here is very passionate about that topic, or one or more passionate about the topic, want to do some additional research or recommendations. Again, it does have to align with the city council priorities, but it does afford the opportunity to do some additional work beyond kind of your standard commissioner responsibility, so to speak. And then the other one is usually a subcommittee is formed for specific projects. So as you can see from the screen, we did have a Middle Avenue Complete Streets Subcommittee, which at this point is some of the members are Vice Chair Cole and Commissioner King. So those 2 members, if they do desire to choose so, will be able to meet offline to discuss that project to the matter that really can either bring back to the commission for a more complete conversation or share their feedback with staff independently. So again, I think in a future time, we can go into this topic a little bit more in detail. For the time being, I just wanted to make sure that the new commissioners are aware of this feature that is within our commission. Okay. So as you know, we do have a chair and a vice chair. So each commission have a chair, vice chair. They're all selected annually. So usually happen in May. So as you might have noticed, the second regular business item or the third business item for tonight will be the selection of a chair and vice chair. The chair's responsibility is essentially the presiding officer for the commission. So as the chair has demonstrated, usually there's a chair notes that you read off of, but really is to run the meeting, right? So the presiding officer. So some of the responsibilities: preserve the order and decorum, excuse me, making sure that the meeting is run according to the law, ensure the meeting effectiveness. Sometimes we do go off track sometimes, so the chair's responsibility is to bring the conversation back to the topic at hand, and then also allowing for adequate public participation. Typically what that means is when there's a public commenter, they have 3 minutes. Depending on the interest of the public, the chair does have the authority to either, typically reduce the 3 minutes to 2, assuming there's a really high volume of the participants. But really the ultimate goal is to be able to allow the people to speak. So that is one of the responsibilities of the chair. If a chair is absent, and then all that responsibility then falls onto the vice chair. So that's the essence of the vice chair. I understand that tonight we have 3 new commissioners, and we do have the selection of chair and co-chair. So I do want to maybe spend a couple of minutes on this just to kind of familiar the new commissioners. Typically with the chair and co-chair, if you do interested, some additional responsibilities, in addition to what I've mentioned already, is the necessity to have a agenda setting meeting. So each month we have an agenda. So of course that means prior to the publication of the agenda, there will be an offline meeting between staff. That will generally be myself, and if other staff necessary, the chair and the vice chair, to go over the agenda, which then obviously subsequently will be published for the meeting. Other than that, usually that's the additional responsibilities that we're looking for from the chair and co-chair. Of course, for the chair, running the meetings, and then the vice chair, kind of learning from the process if that's going to be your first time, but then also being ready to step up whenever the chair is not available to preside the meeting. So that's just some additional responsibilities if the commissioner, any of the commissioners are interested in being the chair and co-chair for next year or for this coming year. Okay, so in addition, we have a couple of liaisons to the commission. So each commission have a city council member liaison. For our commission, that would be Mayor Taylor, Cecilia Taylor. So the role of the city council liaison is really simple. It's really a conduit between the commission and the city council. A good example in the past, For example, if, as I have mentioned before, the commission is an advisory body. So the stuff, the work that we do here typically aligns with the city council's priorities. From time to time, there are passionate projects within the entire commission that is not on the priority. And then so the liaison, the city council liaison would essentially be the conduit for the commission to be able to express that desire to the city council to see if there's a desire to escalate that situation a little bit further. But like I said, I think in my tenure here, I think only 1 or 2 items have perhaps escalated up to the city council level. Typically, the commission and the city council do align pretty well when it comes to transportation. City staff liaison, that would be me, Kevin Chen. So my goal here, again, being a liaison, is to be the conduit between the commission and then the city. Generally, what that means in translation is that I'm here to advise the commission on directions and priorities from the city council, right? So again, city council has priorities. We want to make sure that our commission is aligned with those priorities. Also informing the commission of activities, events, programs, etc. that's transportation related. That usually is in the form of an email. Some of you have already getting emails from myself. Typically, I'll email the commission of upcoming city council meetings that involves either events or items that are transportation related that might be of interest to you all. Additionally, I'll email the commission on other agencies that might have transportation items that involve the city. So for example, the Coleman and Ringwood study, where the county is actually the lead agency, but we as a city is a key stakeholder, given Coleman, half of Coleman is our public right of way. So any meetings, any community meetings that involve the Coleman project, excuse me, I would also email that to the commission as well as kind of just an informational item. And then lastly, just any activities that if I know certain commissioners are interested in, I'll just email the commission as well. And then finally, just ensure the agenda items are brought forth. So basically, as I say, we have projects that come to the commission all the time for feedback and evaluation. So those are essentially my responsibilities to make sure that they get brought to you with plenty of time for conversation, recommendation that ultimately goes to the city council. There are time to time where the project schedule doesn't allow us to be able to bring it to the commission without and then having to go directly to the city council. We do, as staff, try to prevent that as much as we could. We always like to make sure that we bring those items to the commission before we go to the city council. Okay, mention the work plan real quick. So I'm going to try to breeze through this slide right here. But again, each year the city council have their priority workshop, which essentially lays down the foundation for the year for both the city council and staff. And this year, similar to last year, 5 particular elements were identified as priorities for the city council. They're housing, emergency preparedness, climate action, activating downtown, and lastly, safe streets, which obviously is dear to most of our hearts here. Generally, what that means is for the advisory bodies, we also have our work plan. And I do have a reserved slide that I'm happy to kind of go into a little bit later on. But each year, we as a commission also develop our own work plan. Generally speaking, they're high-level work plans. The goal is to try to align with the city council's work plan, and then also kind of taking into account perhaps some of the subcommittee work that might be of interest to some of the commissioners here. So again, we'll go into detail once that item comes to the commission. In terms of the work plan process, pretty straightforward for the commission here. Generally, there will be a meeting that we review the previous work plan, assess that work plan, and see if there's any modifications necessary. Once that's done, the subsequent meeting will be the approval of the work plan. Generally, it's a pretty easy item. And then finally, we need to go to the city council for a formal approval. And generally speaking, the expectation is that we have our work plan ready for the city council approval prior to September 30th. So typically for our commission, generally that means July timeframe is when we start having that work plan conversation. August would be the approval of our work plan. And then a meeting in September is when we go to the city council for the final adoption. And then once it's adopted, at least one report out annually. We haven't been doing a great job of doing that, but that is one thing that I'm trying to be better at.
I just, thank you. I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that the the timeframe of the city council's priority setting meeting is usually like late Feb, early March?
Absolutely. That's actually leading into my next slide. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
Okay, sorry. Then my other question
Yeah.
was, so if we produce our work plan by September, what month would you recommend we do an annual report out to the council?
Yeah, that's usually the trickier part because as many of you know, our transportation projects typically are very lengthy, especially with
Yeah.
community feedback, and we want to make sure that we get all the feedback that we could throughout the community. So that really generally dictates on how much progress we could make on a yearly basis. I think generally the desire is to have it done 6 months in. So at least, yeah, so in that case, we're 6 months into the work plan. Hopefully we make some progress on the work plan. But with that being said, I don't think it's, if we push that out to maybe like an 8-month or a 9-month, I think certainly the city clerk is comfortable with that approach as well. Yeah.
So with the work plan, is it presented at a city council meeting or we just submit it as a report to the city council?
Yeah, so last year it was presented as a consent item.
Consent item?
Yeah.
Okay.
But sometimes they do want the commission to present the work plan. If there's significant changes to the work plan from previous years, then I think sometimes the city council will ask the commission to present the work plan.
Okay, thank you.
But last year it was a consent item. Okay. So this is actually a kind of a transition slide from council, from commission to staff resources and transportation division. But I do want to use this slide just to kind of highlight some of the more programs that might be of interest to this commission specifically. So, and the one that I'm specifically referring to is the capital improvement program. Some of you might know what it is. I'm just going to go ahead and briefly talk about that a little bit in the next slide. But this particular slide is to lay out the schedule. So as our vice chair mentioned, the city council typically will have the priority setting meetings either in January or February. And that really is the purpose to have it there is to, one, allowing all the commissions then to kind of evaluate their work plan and make sure, again, we want to make sure that our work plan aligns with the city council's work plan. So therefore we need a work plan first. Also for the subsequent months is when the city then goes into the budgeting process of identifying projects that align with the city council's work plan. So, and typically for public works, specifically, transportation obviously is within public works. That's usually in the form of a capital improvement program, which typically gets adopted around June timeframe with the budget. So the capital improvement program, in essence, is a short/long range plan, and it generally involves infrastructure, either existing or new infrastructures for the city. So if you will, and the plan is readily available online if you want to kind of peruse through it, but essentially it's divided into the different divisions within public works. So transportation, capital improvement, which generally means sidewalk, utility, maintenance, they're all independently fall under the CIP program. So the CIP program is really funded by multiple sources, which is through local fund. So for example, for local fund, we have our local, for example, like gas tax, local Measure A, Measure W, which some of the things that have passed in the past. Also, we have for transportation, we have a transportation impact fee, which is a fee that we assessed on new developments. So if a new development comes in, depending on the size of the project, they would need to pay a fee to the city. And that fee will then feed into future improvements, which again is included in the capital improvement plan. Not all capital improvement plan projects will qualify for the TIF fee because in order to use the TIF fee, there's a nexus study necessary to qualify. But we do have a nexus study. If those interested, I'm more than happy to provide that link for you all. But the moral of the story here is that we do collect fees from the developers. And as a result of those fees, we can then use that money to make improvements within the capital improvement plan. So that's why, generally speaking, if you see a capital improvement plan, and it's typically 5 years, a 5-year CIP plan, you'll see some projects in there that is within transportation, and some of them will qualify for to use TIF fee. And if they don't, then the city would need to find money elsewhere. So for example, we have a general fund that we collect, tax dollars, et cetera, from, or we go out and we seek grant funding. Our transportation project, luckily, we do have a lot of regional, local, state, even federal funding, so grant funding opportunities that we can go after. So a lot of our projects are actually funded by a grant fund. So for example, Middle Avenue Complete Streets project, that one is primarily being funded by the TEA, the Transportation Authority's Measure A fund. So that's just kind of a good example right there.
Sorry, is that state level?
Regional level. So like, yeah, county. Yeah. So like I said, this is a good transition slide into what what staff do here. So the next few slides, just a really quick snapshot for the commission about the transportation division specifically. So as I mentioned before, we as staff, we are here to fulfill the city council's priorities and making sure that the projects proceed accordingly. So you can generally look at our resources in 3 buckets. One is sort of our baseline daily operation. And each of this, I'll have a slide to kind of go into a little bit more detail. So your baseline daily operation, phone calls, reviewing of development projects, we consider those to be baseline operations. On top of that, then you have your city council work plan projects. So as I mentioned before, each year there's a work plan that is being developed by the city council. Later on, there will be a set of projects that is being asked by the city council that these are the projects that they would like to see moving forward. Again, for the purpose of transportation, that typically you would see about 60% of the project is essentially a carryover from the previous years. Once a project is done, we will usually go to the CIP program because the CIP program is a 5-year program. So we know exactly what is lining up for us next for the next 5 years. So that's usually how the sequencing goes. There are times where the city council might want to say, I want to pick this project and move it ahead of some other projects. All that conversation then gets done at the city council priority discussion level. That typically doesn't happen very often, but it could. And then finally, just so we usually reserve some time for some unanticipated emergency priorities. For example, maybe there's a third agency that want to do some project that they would like the city to participate as a stakeholder. Typically that means city member, we need to attend those stakeholder meetings. If there's a document, a deliverable, either a planning document or a design document, then staff need to spend the time to review and provide comments accordingly. So those are some additional unanticipated consequences being an agency. Okay, so the next few slides are just going to be some specific examples of those tasks. The first one here is the baseline daily operation. So again, we are a public agency. So in addition to projects that we do, we're also here to serve the public. So here are just some of the key daily tasks that you'll see us doing. Traffic control plans, that just means if there's a construction going on, we want to make sure that construction is done in a safe manner. Typically, we'll ask the contractor to prepare what we call a traffic control plan. We, as a transportation division, is responsible for reviewing that plan, make sure that it follows state guidelines. The proper signages are going to be provided. If there's lane closure, the proper detour signs are provided. So those are things that we do on a daily basis. We also administer the truck route program, as well as the signing and striping maintenance program. That typically means the maintenance of existing signing and striping. So for example, periodically we'll get a phone call or an email from a resident saying, hey, this sign or this set of striping is faded. Can you please go ahead and replace it? And we would do so using that program. We also have a systematic way of trying to be more proactive with replacing those signs. However, the demand for the last few years have risen quite a bit. So we're almost in a more of a reactive mode than a proactive mode. Hopefully in the next year or so, once we kind of clear those backlogs, we'll be able to become more proactive again. Additionally, we're also responsible for the maintenance of the signals and streetlights within the city. We also administer our Safe Route to School program. We also have a city shuttle program. So again, all of those are what we consider to be baseline day-to-day operations. Here's a quick snapshot of some of the transportation projects. Many of these you probably know by heart now, if you're a commissioner that follow those projects. We have, for example, the Belhaven Traffic Calming Plan project, which we are hopefully gonna be done with that project in a month or so, a couple of months or so. There are also the Caltrain's Quiet Zone. Again, this is just a quick snapshot of some of the projects. Happy to go into more details if any of the commissioners desire.
Hello. Hi, Kevin.
Yeah.
On the Belhaven,
Mhm.
so just for a bit of context, the Belhaven Traffic Calming Plan was put together and approved and all that before I think anyone here was on, oh, Jackie maybe was on, but I know myself and Lisbeth and Brian weren't on the commission yet. So I think it's an implementation phase. And since our city council liaison is Mayor Taylor and she's represents Belhaven. Sorry, I just swallowed a chocolate. I'm wondering if there might be like an opportunity if there's, sorry, I think I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry. If there's some sort of event or, excuse me, something, sorry, if there's some sort of event or something where maybe Mayor Taylor, after it's implemented, and maybe there's a community meeting, or maybe she's, noting that it's implemented or something. Maybe there's an opportunity for the group to go and walk through some of the key elements of the implementation, of the traffic calming plan. So we're familiar with it. And also she, being the liaison can get us aware of what's going on in her district.
Yeah, no, I think certainly this, from a city council level, there's definitely that level of communication between city council members and city manager. So I'm fairly positive that Mayor Taylor is aware of the project. Yeah, she's aware of project.
Oh, I didn't mean to say she wasn't aware. I was just saying maybe, well, I will talk offline. I was just trying to figure out if there's an opportunity for this group to look at it and maybe with her or something. I don't know. We'll talk about it offline.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we can certainly
making
have that conversation offline.
And then I sneezed.
Mhm.
I do have one thing I just wanted to call out to the new members, which when I got on the commission, I thought it was really about streets only, but I was pleasantly surprised when we discussed the Caltrain Quiet Zone. So I guess it goes to say that though we're called Complete Streets, it isn't just about bikes and cars and peds, right? We also looked at obviously Caltrain.
No, yeah, certainly not just cars, bikes, and pedestrians. We do have the train system in the Bayfront area. We also have the Dumbarton Rail, although not much progress has been made, but that is also something that, in the past few years when Meta was doing their planning phase, that particular item, I think I shared that with a few commissioners at the time as well. So yeah, no, I think point very well made, not just ped and bike and cars, but even
Although,
beyond that.
I just want to ask, just to understand whatever our role might be with Caltrain, I think, were we seeing quiet zone because it was going to require street changes of some sort, right? There
Right.
was something having to do with street. I just don't, because they were all going to need more crossing guard arms, right? So like,
Yep.
we don't have a lot to do with Caltrain's like operation, but as it impacts streets,
Mhm.
it comes to us.
Yeah, exactly. So this is one of those where, from a staff perspective, we're leading the design, but you're absolutely correct. the actual execution of the project essentially is the implementation or the installation of more guardrails up and down the track, and which essentially establishes the quiet zone. So you're correct from a policy standpoint. There aren't really much that the commission will need to weigh in on, other than just knowing that it's in progress. And then sometimes we do bring the item to. I believe we brought the item to at one time to discuss the budget of it all, and then got your recommendation how we want to proceed with the design, which I think we ultimately went with proceeding with design for Ravenswood and Oak Grove, because each was going to cost about $2 million. So yeah, so from a policy standpoint, I believe it came to the commission for just recommendation on how many crossings we want to proceed with from a budgetary standpoint, but not from a operational standpoint. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm really enjoying this whole overview.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, happy to dive into any specific projects as you desire. And then just kind of before we kind of go into the look ahead, just wanted to kind of highlight some of the projects that we are not necessarily the lead division on, but more of a partner to other divisions. So for example, our CIP division, they have a yearly street improvement. So you might notice that every year there will be some streets getting resurfaced or slurry seal or rebuilt, et cetera, et cetera. That's usually the time for the transportation division to go in and see if there's any opportunity to make improvements from a striping standpoint, kind of using that collaboration effort. So, that is just kind of one key elements that we've been doing a lot more lately. And then of course, there's some other projects that are more on the streetscape perspective. So for example, Haven Avenue streetscape, where we're looking to connect for those folks that around the area. We have the most of the apartment complex that got built and occupied a few years ago, connecting to Betwell Bayfront Park. There's that missing gap in terms of the sidewalk and bicycle facilities. So one of the CIP projects that is currently under construction, and we're hoping to get it done by maybe end of the year or so, is to complete that gap. So with that project, there will be a continuous sidewalk along Haven Avenue. There will be a continuous bike lane facility along Haven Avenue too. So it's one of those where we are not necessarily the lead, our CIP division is the lead, but we're heavily involved given the bike lane feature.
Kevin,
And
sorry,
then,
I have another
oh,
question.
sorry.
Pardon. Can you go back a couple slides where you were listing the baseline operations? I just had
Yeah.
one. There we go.
Baseline.
No,
right?
no baseline. Yeah.
Yeah.
So your division is part of Public Works.
Right.
Right. So when it comes to things like signing and striping and signal maintenance and everything, is that carried out by Public Works staff, like city employees?
The actual execution. Not necessarily. We actually have we have on-call contractors that do the
okay.
actual execution of it
Okay.
all. We do have a maintenance division. So our maintenance division, we do have a street division a street crew within the maintenance division. So they're also capable of doing some of the work. So for example, they're more than capable to do signing and striping work, and
Right.
they're also there to repair potholes and street repairs, et cetera, et
great.
cetera.
Okay.
So, but what we typically, for our program, we have our own on-call contractors that we rely on for that work,
Okay.
because our streets crew is pretty busy with other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, and here's just a quick picture of the pathway that recently got put in as part of the Willow Oaks Park improvement. This is the pathway that essentially cuts through the International School, connecting the Willows neighborhood to Willow Road. This is actually one of the key projects that I was kind of working on when I started my tenure with the city, and I'm very personally speaking, very happy to see it get done. But it meant to be really a key connector from a ped and bike standpoint of being able to connect the Willows neighborhood to Willow Road and then subsequently to Coleman as well. So this is one of the key connections that we're finally able to actually install. So we're super happy about that one. Okay, this is my last slide, so just gonna bear with me for a second here. Again, the first item I want to kind of quickly highlight, as some of the commissioners kind of just think over whether or not you would like to be venture out and be a vice chair of this coming year. Certainly welcome that for the next topic. But also just kind of highlighting the commission work plan. We do anticipate to bring the work plan back to the commission for the July and August month for the approval. Also, I will be sending out an email to the commission with some relevant links for you all. There are a couple documents that are quite helpful in terms of just kind of understanding the long range plan for the city, which are our transportation master plan and our Vision Zero action plan. The two plans, while they are independent from one another, but they're also connected. The transportation master plan was developed a few years ago. The idea behind that was to be a comprehensive plan that talks about all the improvements that the city wanted to see in the next X amount of years. So it has a lot of vehicular improvement, bicycle improvement, to some extent pedestrian improvement, and even transit improvements. And it's meant to be a long range document. With the Vision Zero action plan, it essentially takes the transportation master plan and then added some prioritization to it. So when you're reviewing the Vision Zero action plan, what you will see is different categories of projects that the city would like to proceed with. Added on top of that, a prioritization of those projects. So while the two plans, like I say, are independent, they are somewhat connected. You won't see all the projects in the transportation master plan in the Vision Zero plan, because the Vision Zero plan does target meant to be more safety related. So you're looking at intersections, you're looking at roadways, you're typically looking at more infrastructure type of projects, versus the transportation master plan does include all that plus more. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of both. And then finally, I just wanted to kind of bring this to the attention of the commission. I did receive various feedbacks from various commissioners, so I'm kind of bringing that to the forefront for a conversation as well. As you know, in the past, years past, when I wasn't the liaison for the Complete Streets Commission, we used to present upcoming topics, and we'll include that in the agenda. So I've received some expression, some desire to have that as part of the agenda as well. So that was one of my intent, is that for future agendas, I would add an item that discloses some of the project milestones. So some of the list of projects that we have, the milestones that they're in, and then also a list of potential topics that are going to come to the Complete Streets Commission in the next X amount of months, hopefully like a 4 to 5 month forecast, if you will. I do want to at least just put a little caveat that our project typically does fluctuate in terms of time frame, and it's somewhat fluid. So I do want to at least ask for forgiveness that sometimes when you see a project, we might have to postpone it for one reason or another. So with that in mind, some of the key projects that are going to come to the commission in the near future, I just went ahead and listed 3 of them here. The Middlefield Road Safety Streets, where we did the road diet last year. The next step is so we have a consultant that we have brought on board to do some analysis. The next step is to go out and do a survey, as well as come up with some additional features that were not previously already implemented. The goal is to be able to do a more comprehensive plan with Middlefield, and that is something that we'll obviously bring to the commission at the appropriate time. The other one is a shuttle study. So we have currently ongoing a comprehensive shuttle study for the city, essentially evaluating what we are offering right now with an eye towards the future of the expenses necessary to continue the program, and ultimately coming up with a recommendation how we want to continue that program. So that item obviously will come to the commission in the near future as well. And then lastly, the Vision Zero implementation plan. So as part of the Vision Zero plan, one of the things that that staff been wanting to do is to be able to put that plan into a more executable form. In this case, more of an implementation plan. And what that's going to look like is still in work in progress, but I think ultimately what we as staff want to bring to the commission are essentially almost similar to a 5-year CIP program, where we identify number of projects for each of the categories within the Vision Zero plan, identifying what they are, and for each year, come to you with that list and get your feedback on that list. And of course, like I mentioned before, since the Vision Zero plan already has prioritization built into it, we'll essentially use that prioritization to come up with that list. But our goal is to be able to develop that 5-year look ahead, present that to the commission for feedback in the near future as well. So I think of all the projects that I've listed previously, those 3 are most likely going to be the ones that are coming to you in the next 4 to 6 months or so. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and happy to answer any questions.
Kevin, hi.
Yeah.
I have a question. Actually, I wanted to say something. I wanted to add an enrichment to your excellent presentation, which was that I do think that occasionally there are some opportunities for commissioners to serve on different task forces outside the commission. And I've had the pleasure of doing that, both the San Mateo County thing that Meredith and I worked on together. And also last year, I was on the Vision Zero task force that heard the data from the consultants that they gathered and some of the ideas about the plan, and got to look at it and review it and kick the tires, whatever, and give some thoughts. And I think those opportunities are really fruitful and educational, and I'm glad that they exist. Just wanted to share that. And also, what was the other thing I wanted to share? That might have been it. That's all. Thank you.
No, yeah, thank you for bringing that up, actually. Yeah, so as Vice Chair Cole mentioned, periodically, again, the nature of our project typically has a very extensive community outreach plan. Sometimes a project might be big enough where we start forming task forces or community groups to really for twofold. One is to be able to gather some of the inputs from either commissioners, council members, or members of the public that are very much interested in the topic, but also using that platform to be able to use that group as an advocate for the city as well. So certainly periodically, whenever there's a project, where we reach out to the commission, see if there's anyone interested in representing, either attend those, offline one-off meetings, or maybe becoming a member of a group, essentially. So yeah, there'll be plenty of opportunities for any of the commissioners here to join one in the future if you so desire. But yes, thank you for bringing that up.
I think I would add, like the Coleman Ringwood was a recent example of a task force that had somebody from the commission on it. And like, it doesn't come before, well, anyway, it's a good example of that. Sorry. So does anybody have any questions about what? Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna call for public comment and then have a sort of, after that, a moment to have everybody sort of, you get your own little moment with the mic to sort of introduce yourself and what brought you here, but we'll also share that same information so that you get kind of a full picture of all the people on the commission and why we're all here and what we're interested in and what have you. Okay? Okay. So Kevin, can you call for public comment on this?
Great, will do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So for virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press 9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. So I am seeing no cards here in person and then no raised hands virtually. So I return the meeting back to the chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Really quickly, I kind of wanted to have a minute to, so not only to hear from the new commission members, but, and a little bit about what makes you interested in Complete Streets, even though you've probably already written it on an application and told Kevin and told a lot of other people. And then, also to hear from us, sort of what brought us to be doing this same work. And then any other questions that you might have. I did start working on something with Commissioner Altman, who's not here tonight. It has kind of a list of definitions and some things, a lot of what Kevin already covered. And part of it is an effort to provide you with some information about kind of a couple of recent projects and some basic, again, it looks a lot, there's a lot of overlap with what Kevin said. It's just this week, it kind of got away from me, and my coworker on this is out of town, and so it didn't quite get done for tonight. But I think that after tonight, I can put it, like, tidy up some things and have Kevin share it, because one of the other things that comes up, I'm sure it's in all the rules and the Brown Act things, is that typically we don't email each other on the thing. So you can, like, email the members of your subcommittee, and you can, like, Sally and I can have a conversation and trade an email, but we generally, we don't send anything out that anyone would offer feedback on, so that I can't send an article out to all the commission members to be like, hey, you guys should read this article about a new way to do bike lanes. And then everybody chimes back in and talks about this new way to do bike lanes. And now we've had a discussion about bike lanes out of the public eye. And when we all show up with, like, insider information, so it's to try to get rid of. And so because of that, we typically run everything that we want to send out to the commission through Kevin, who will either send it out to the commission or tell us why he isn't. But I've never had him say he isn't. So I assume I could probably send something like that. But so anyway, that's just why when I finish with this, I'm not just going to email it to you. I'm going to send it to Kevin, and Kevin will send it to you. So I guess unless nobody else wants to go first, this is the one time I'll go
I
first.
wanted to bring up something on the emails. Frequently, as a commission, we are emailed from a member of the community. And do you want to kind of go over, and I'd like to hear your input as well, Kevin, what the appropriate response, given that it is to all of us?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for Chair and Commissioner King's point of view. That's in the effort of trying to be as high level as possible. Those are actually really important key elements. So definitely in terms of communication amongst commissioners, we would like to avoid that for Brown Act violation purposes. So as the chair mentioned, if any of the commissioners have an interesting article or a tidbit of information that we'd like to share with the entire commission, the typical process is for the commissioners to email that to me or share that with me, and then I'll disseminate that to the entire commission through BCC, because generally we want to avoid, like the chair mentioned, offline communications amongst commissioners. Typically, it's probably not that bad if it, but from an optics standpoint, we want to avoid any possible violation. So, and then to Commissioner King's perspective, absolutely right. As a member of the public and being a commissioner, that generally means your information is out there, and folks that are maybe living in your district or some other districts that know you might reach out to you for a question or an inquiry or etc. For those type of inquiries, what staff recommendation is to share that with us. And then in turn, what we can do is we can provide you with the latest information. So for example, if there's a request to replace a sign here or there that didn't come to us, instead it went to you guys, more than happy to for you all to forward that to us, and we'll take care of that request right away. If it's something that requires more collaboration, typically my recommendation is for staff to kind of take over the communication portion of things, because that generally means there's probably going to be a bit more back and forth, and just really not necessary to make you the middleman in that case. Then at that point, staff can take over communication with that resident and then address them accordingly. So thank you very much for bringing that up.
Anyway, I'm happy to go first this one time to introduce myself. So I'm Jackie Seabury, and I've been on the commission, I'm gonna say maybe 4 or 5 years. I feel like I should know this answer, but I don't. And I came to it partly because I really enjoy the civic engagement thing. I was served on the library commission for 8 years before this, and after 2 terms, you have to step away and do something else. You can come back, I guess, but 2 terms is your limit in a row. And so I had taken a spot on the Transportation Master Plan Outreach Committee because they were gathering people from different commissions, and because I'm a resident of Bellhaven and they were a little underrepresented on that committee. And so that, I think, is where I started into the wow, this whole transportation thing is really interesting. And I had also just bought an e-bike because I thought getting to Bellhaven was going to make my head explode one day. And trying to get over during the 101 interchange thing, getting over the freeway was really a challenge. So I bought an e-bike, and that, of course, sparked my interest in what bike infrastructure looks like, because I go from Bellhaven to Oak Knoll every school day, and I get to traverse most of our safe routes to school. So that is what brought me here, and I just, yeah, that's pretty much it. Somebody want to go next? Do we just go this way and then that way? Should have started at one end. Okay.
So I, 1,000 years ago, Kevin, I don't know if you know this, worked for the New York City subway system. Yes, back in the 80s. Anyway, yeah, so I got interested. I've been on for 3 years. I got interested in complete streets because I live on Santa Cruz and saw a lot of craziness with bikes and cars. And also partly because I was living on Santa Cruz when they decided to, the city council approved sidewalks for the first time on Santa Cruz. And that was really a revelation to me because it made an enormous difference to the street. I started really thinking about the importance of circulation and people getting out and about, and how much better it made the city when that happened successfully. So anyway, I joined the Complete Streets Commission. I guess I wanted to just sort of say, I don't know, as an anecdote, after you said, let's introduce ourselves, kind of maybe what my interest is now after 3 years, and maybe something I've learned. But I'd say working on the Vision Zero plan last year was so transformative for me, because it was the first time I think I was able to step back after understanding kind of the granular stuff, what kinds of things do we do to control calming or direct bikes and things like that. It was a big pullback on how do we set priorities around the city based on data and what causes accidents. And so that really felt to me like a really great strategic view, and I'm very enthusiastic about the Vision Zero plan. I guess 2 other things one thing I'm interested in, and one thing I've learned. Interested in outreach. I think one of the trickiest parts of this job is when something we're working on or advising on creates a big change, like Middle Avenue. The outreach that the city staff work really hard on with the community, and understanding how much outreach is enough. That's a really tough boundary to set, and it's been interesting to see how the community reacts. Sometimes they think there's too much, sometimes they think there's too little. And I know that the city staff, I see them work really hard to do outreach, but I'm interested in that aspect and kind of where that right place is. The last thing I'll say is one of the things I've learned I really like about these conversations is the design element. How do you use the right tool and design a street in a way that encourages people to exhibit good behaviors? Because we can't always have good behaviors, and we also can't always have enforcement. So some of those things like a perfectly placed bollard or something, can do a lot. And it turns out that's the case. And that's my understanding of it. And that I do feel that decisions we make are important, or the things we advise on are important for that reason.
I ask one,
Yes, indeed.
can you give a really quick, couple sentence thing about what Vision Zero really is? We talked a lot about it today, but I feel like having been on the committee, you're super well suited to give a
Sure.
really fast thing about it.
Sure. I would say that what it is no, not at all. So Vision Zero is actually a approach to managing street safety that a lot of municipalities have adopted. And so Menlo Park took a look at it and said, do we want to adopt this strategic approach to prioritization that other municipalities have? And the way the strategy is informed is from data. So we looked at data that had been collected over years, all over this, like a map of the city, like where there were maps and maps and maps. And you'd have one map be, okay, now you're looking at high crash corridors. Now you're looking at, school zones and what's happened there. And it was really, really educational for me to see where the problems are, where the issues are, and where collisions occur. The term Vision Zero refers to zero fatalities. The point of it is we can actually, if the goal is to work as hard as we can to prevent fatalities, then we do the right things like reduce speed and just make navigating streets on behalf of all users easier and clearer and separate their behaviors. What I liked about it is that in the end, there was when the assistant public works director went to present the Vision Zero plan to City Council. The approach is sort of divided into two chunks based on what the data showed about Menlo Park. And the first chunk is that we need to really spend more time on ensuring safety in quote unquote Menlo Park's high crash corridors, which, as you would expect, are things like Santa Cruz and Willow and Middle, et cetera. And then the other piece is, so that's kind of job one. But the other piece is that, and I love this, that there are certain places, and school zones was one of them, where there are similar problems that we now should be encouraging systemic solutions around. So instead of saying, oh, let's look what's going on in Encinal, what's going on in Los Lomitas, it's more like, let's look across these similar situations and maybe we come up with one thing we can apply to all of them and speed up safety in similar venues. They're not high crash corridors necessarily, but they're places where you see behaviors that need correcting and the behaviors are similar. So that was sort of a two-pronged approach to the Vision Zero plan. Hope that was helpful.
My name is Liz King, and I came to the commission with Sally in the midst of COVID. And our whole first year was via Zoom. So we never got to meet in person and come into this chamber until, 2 years ago, maybe. Anyway, I came to the commission kind of wanting to get more involved in civic activities. As a parent, I was really interested in the safe routes to school, specifically the corridor over by La Entrada, the corridor going over to Dutch Goose and all the way to Sand Hill. And also as a small business owner, really interested in reinvigorating downtown Menlo Park and making that more of a walk friendly, bike friendly, park friendly. And I think one of the things I've realized on this, I think you'll hear us talk a lot about bikes, but we also recognize pedestrians, automobiles, but also the different populations and the senior population along with the handicap population and of course the youth as well. I think the other thing to keep in mind is your vocabulary is quickly going to expand. I can remember coming on here and learning quickly what an armadillo was and a bollard and things that I was not familiar with. So anyway, welcome. We're really glad to have you guys.
I'm Matthew Raskoff. Glad to be with you all. For me, the Safe Routes to School program was also the entree into this discussion. Jasper is my second grader here at Oak Knoll, and I, in my first year when he was a kindergartner, joined that committee at the school and then became co-chair last year and have now led kind of a series of community-wide bike rides that engage some of our city council members and just saw the potential, I think, for bringing folks together around these issues. I think there's actually a lot of consensus around it. And if we engage people in the right way, in the right questions, and help underline where the commonalities are, I think we actually can make a lot of progress. I think we saw that in the city council discussion last night. I think, Sally, your comment underlined this, that it's not like bicyclists versus cars. I think there's actually just great benefits that we could see for all road users. And I think we can, if we raise the topics the right way and then use the right vocabulary, not over people's heads, and give them an opportunity to participate, I think we can actually just realize a lot of the potential that we have as a city. So that was kind of my motivation. It's kind of rethinking the way we have these conversations and organize around them and bring people together. And yeah, I think that's a good role for an advisory body like this one, where it's not formal decision making, but we have the power to kind of go out into the field, to bring your clipboard out and ask people questions. And I've definitely seen that motivation at Oak Knoll, and there's no reason why it has to stop when you leave elementary school. I think there's a lot of potential with different demographics around the city, many of whom would benefit from the kinds of reforms that we're talking about here.
My name is Athena Yarakomos. I am, coming to the Safe Streets kind of environment from like the perspective of someone who really uses the streets in all of the ways. I really, I was at Stanford. I've been in the Palo Alto Menlo Park area for 10 years now. And then as I have been introduced to cycling as a transportation method, it has become really transformative in my own life. And I find myself kind of evangelizing about like riding your bike everywhere. But I'm also very much a transit enthusiast. I do occasionally need to drive. So really like getting the perspective of all of those, communities, and really like being able to engage with all of that. I do find myself, leaning towards trying to get people out of cars, trying to get people onto the street so that they can, I encounter a lot of young people biking to school in the morning while I am biking to work. And that brings such a joy to me every morning, just to see them on their way and then their little groups of friends. And I think that's an environment that I really feel inspired to promote. And
My name is Meredith Bergen Bailey, and I also came kind of from a parental perspective. I got roped into helping at the Laurel Elementary School third grade bike rodeo when my kid was in kindergarten. And from there, I ended up with the Safe Routes to School program. And then from there, I participated in the Coleman Ringwood Community Action Committee, which was really a fascinating and continues to be a very interesting introduction for me into outreach and community consensus, and then just the physicality of like, what can we do in this space? I think all of those things together just brought me to want to be more participate more in this type of setting, and hopefully do all the good that I can.
We're happy to have all of you, and thank you so much for stepping up. Okay, unless anybody has anything else to add. Jasper, did you want to? Okay. All right, I have to put my glasses on. So the next, I'm going to close this item and move on to the next one, which is selection of chair and vice chair. And Kevin, Senior Transportation Engineer, can you please introduce the item?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. So as I mentioned previously, each year our commission go through the process of selecting a new chair and vice chair. So, and as I mentioned before, typically in addition to your typical commissioner responsibility, the chair and the vice chair do have to at least spend an hour each month with staff for the purpose of agenda setting meeting. It's also a good time for us to talk about the agenda, but then also talk about other topics that might be of interest to the chair and vice chair, and then also collaborating. For example, if there's a particular topic that might be of interest to the commission, finding out, coming up with a way to bring that forward, so that way we can have a frank and public dialogue about the topic. So again, generally highly recommend for those folks that haven't done it yet, to at least experience the responsibilities of the chair and the co-chair, and then certainly also a little bit of a behind the curtain look, so to speak. So with that in mind, I do have, I guess I maybe open up the floor to any commissioners if they have any questions about the responsibilities of the chair and co-chair, before I kind of move into the next step, which is asking for nominations of the chair and co-chair. If there's any additional inquiries that I can answer before, be happy to. No? All right.
Can I make a can I say something?
Sure.
It's not really
Yeah,
a
of course.
question. It's more of a, I think it's, you've already said it. I just want to reiterate it. It really, I think both, certainly having been the chair now for a year, like, you get notes. So I don't have to know all these things. It's all written in red for me, which is quite helpful. And also, being vice chair it's a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about the commission, even while you're new to it. I find it's really, that isn't really a barrier unless you want it to be, but which is also totally understandable. But I have found like I do really enjoy those agenda setting meetings. It's a time to kind of ask, for me, like follow-up questions about things that don't necessarily need to be asked here, but like, why do we do this thing this way? And so, because Kevin this is a wealth of information about why we do things the way we do them here. So anyway, I just want to add that little note, in case anybody was thinking they were interested in that.
I guess maybe we let the new folks know. I think you can self-nominate.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So in terms of the nomination, the process, we would usually like to seek nomination for the chair first, and then the vice chair. Procedurally speaking, yes, any one of you can nominate someone else, or you can self-nominate as well. Once we have all the nominations, I will then go around the table to ask for votes for each of the nominees, and the nominee with the most votes then would proceed to be selected for the chair role and then the vice chair role subsequently. So yes, absolutely, you're more than welcome to nominate yourself. Okay, with that said, then we'll go ahead and open the floor for nomination for the chair position. So again, the chair position would serve starting June of this year all the way until May of next year for a 12-month calendar period.
I nominate Vice Chair Cole for chair.
Okay. So we have a nomination of Vice Chair Ko from the chair, Cyprian, and then a second from Commissioner King. Okay, Great, thank you. So just wanted to give it a second to see if any more nominations. I'm seeing none, so we have one nomination. Great, thank you very much. So in that case, commissioners that would like to vote yes to selecting our Commissioner Ko as the next chair, if you can please raise your hand. I am seeing unanimous hands. Great. Oh, vote for yourself. Okay. Yeah, procedurally speaking. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I'm seeing, let me just give me a second as I note this down. Okay. Great. So now open the floor for vice chair nomination. So again, the vice chair, we do, the expectation is that you attend those agenda setting meeting as well, but then in terms of running the meeting, be essentially a in the secondary role. Unless the chair can make it, then we expect the vice chair to then run the meeting. Like the chair mentioned, all the notes will be prepared for you, so hopefully make the job as easy as possible. But then I'll always be here to kind of help with the process as well. So do not feel like as a vice chair, if running the meeting might be the first time, do not feel like it's not that daunting of a task. We'll make sure that you run as smooth as possible. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and open the floor for nomination of the vice chair. See if anyone's interested.
I would like to nominate Commissioner King.
Okay. Okay, great. So we have Commissioner King. That would be a nomination from Vice Chair Ko, or in this case, Chair Ko. Do I have a second for the nomination?
I'll second that.
Great, thank you. I have a second from Commissioner Cyprian. Great. In that case, maybe just any more nominations? Anyone interested? No? Seeing none? Okay, great. So once again, we have a nomination of Commissioner King on the table to be the vice chair of the upcoming year. For commissioners that would like to vote yes to this nomination, if you can please just raise your hand for 1 second. Great, thank you very much. In that case, congratulations to new Chair Ko and then Vice Chair King. Thank you very much. Yay.
I just want to make a quick mention that so the three people who are new, next year when we do this all over again, I want to make sure. Well, I just want to say this myself. So I had been the chair previously, so I will devote some of my time this year to like training you guys, if that's like an okay way to say it, or answering any questions or anything like that involving you as much as I can, because the wonderful thing about this commission is that people roll off and people roll on, and you'll be in these seats and you'll have a lot of fun with it. And I just want to make sure that I'm a good resource for all of you.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, Chair and Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair Cyprian, for your service and your excellent leadership this year.
Delighted to pass it on. Okay, so next up, I have informational items. City staff provides an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment, or to ask a question on any of the informational items. The one informational item tonight is update on major project status. And before I ask you to proceed, Kevin, I have to say that I work as a reading specialist. I all the time tell kids, all readers make mistakes. It's just we notice when it happens and we fix them up. So like making mistakes is not a thing that is a problem for reading. It's okay. Anyway, so now you can proceed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I share that sentiment as well. I usually make a lot of mistakes when I'm reading something. Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you very much. No major updates at this moment for the commission. So I do have two little bit tidbit of information to share. First of all, I think actually most of the commissioners actually attended. So as you may recall, we had a partnership with UC Berkeley's Safe Transportation Research and Education Center, which they were able to hire a consultant free of charge to the city to conduct a complete streets assessment study. So in this case, the two locations that were picked and evaluated were Santa Cruz Avenue from Cloud Avenue to University, and then Sand Hill Road from Oak Avenue to Sharon Park. And as part of the Sand Hill portion, they also evaluated that first block of Alpine from Sand Hill to Juniper Serra Boulevard. So since then, we had a group sort of a debrief meeting with where the consultants were there. Many of the participants also were there as well. I was able to participate for about 20 minutes or so. But I have to step off for another meeting. With all that being said, the next step for that effort, the consultant will go back and prepare a draft report, a summary report for the staff to review. And then after, we'll be more than happy to share that document with the commission, make it public as well, just so that we can share that information with the general public, with the goal of hopefully implementing some of the recommendations, rolling that in as part of the Vision Zero implementation plan. Because as you know, the two right now really, there's quite a bit of a synergy in that front. So we're hoping to be able to take that recommendation and roll that into the Vision Zero, that first year of implementation that I mentioned. The second bit of tidbit that I would like to share with you all is that the Belhaven Community Campus, if you don't already know, there's a grand opening day. Saturday, May 18th. It's going to start at 11 o'clock. I've been told that there's a lot of goodies that will be there. There will be a great celebration. And if you haven't checked out the campus yet, I was able to get a tour. It's a very, very much a fabulous facility. I mean, the decoration, the decor, the design of it all, the pool, the view from the second floor, the project is just a tremendous success. So if you don't already have that on your calendar, I highly recommend that you put that on your calendar. Again, it'll be Saturday, May 18th, grand opening, starting at 11 a.m. So yeah, with that, I will conclude my update. Thank you.
Can I add something? I would add to what Kevin said. It is a really beautiful building, and it has like lovely floor to ceiling windows throughout a nice second floor balcony adjacent to the grown-up library, which is on the second floor, and the kids library is on the first floor. So if you happen to have kids playing at Kelly Park, now you can sit on the library balcony and watch them, which is way more fun than your car, probably. So anyway, I totally recommend visiting it. I really recommend riding a bike because I think parking is limited and hopefully bike racks are not. Great. I think that's it. Oh, Kevin, can you please call for public comment on this item?
Oh, right. That's one thing I always forget.
That's what the
Apologies.
notes helped me with.
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press 9 to raise your virtual hand. If you're participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. So I do not have any public comment cards here in person, and I do not see any hands raised in the virtual room. So I will return the meeting back to the chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kevin. It is 8:15 and I'm adjourning the meeting. They won't always end this early, but
Great, thank you. Good night, everyone.